or anything about, yeah, whatever. Anything about slider shapes or something. True, there's a lot of curved sliders.
Not a lot of blanketing, especially in the KI.
Yeah, true. There's a few ones.
I'm disconnected again. Holy God, I hate this.
Amazing. Are the sliders like curved differently, or is it, are they consistently curved?
It looks consistently. This is as far as I can see. In some part they use a little, not so curved, but so far they're pretty similar.
Yeah, I think throughout the map it's basically always the same slider shapes. And with the straight sliders also, they are, I think, all of them are tilted the same amount. And Brody is right, there's this one epic slider that is completely different from everything else, which stands out. Maybe at this point, it's might be good to point out that using a lot of things consistently and or like something you can do with structure is if you repeat a certain idea consistently when the song doesn't change or if nothing special is happening, the more you repeat something, the more it stands out when something completely different happens. Like for example, earlier Brody pointed out the funny triples in the bridge section. These guys. If they've happened throughout the map before, they kind of wouldn't be really be interesting or special at all. They would just happen everywhere. I guess the map would still be sort of like more special compared to all other maps, but because it's only in this one section, that one section stands out. It seems really special. True, you're right, Yako. Those jumps repeat. Now, I don't know if you were there earlier. Hello. Oh,
Hey.
hi. We're doing lecture.
Hey. Lecture.
Lecture.
Why is Yako still not in?
What?
What do you mean?
Problem, I
I'm
think.
here.
He turned off his mic all the time.
Oh my god.
I don't know if Yako was if you were there earlier, but we said earlier something about stacking and jumps in general. I think you were there.
No, I'm probably in the toilet in this time.
Okay. Like.
Okay.
So, if you look at all these patterns, Yako, and I think all of them are in different sections of the song, or at least some. So, well, the thing you pointed out is a good example of something which repeats in one specific pattern, while the stacking idea in general repeats throughout the entire map. So that's kind of a important difference. Yeah. What's up?
I just realized that the stacking stuff.
What you will notice though is this kind of stacking arrangement is more frequent in the Kais.
That is also true. Yes.
And since it's, as Sally mentioned, it's not something that you'd often see in maps, it's something that can be considered an unusual choice. What most players might not think is, typically usual, can make it more difficult to read. So the fact it's used in the Kais more frequently does give the Kais more intensity with the use of this pattern.
Yeah, or you could say besides maybe intensity or something, there's also an idea like because it was earlier introduced or whatever, it was earlier used. Seeing it it appear later more frequently, sort of how do you say? It's like it feels like it was hinted at, and then when it
So
later on
it's
appears more,
the
it's
the
interesting.
concept of the stacks was introduced early on and then developed later.
Yeah. Should develop is a good word. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you have an idea and you use it earlier, and then later on you build on top of that idea. You do more complex or more challenging things with it, maybe.
Yeah. Because earlier on it was just the simple back and forth that we used in terms of these stacks. Right in the intro, I'm talking about. And then it was, it was used every now and then in the build-up. In the Kai, the back and forth were used in combination with triple stacks as well. So the use of two kinds of stacks for two separate rhythms might be hard if it wasn't introduced earlier. But
Sure.
because it was introduced earlier on the map, combining these different types of stacks makes it a lot easier for the player to recognize and play, which might not be the case if these kinds of ideas weren't used earlier on.
Yeah. Maybe also a little interesting thing about the specific pattern, which someone pointed out earlier. You can kind of if you just listen to how the song sort of sounds like, you can kind of recognize how this specific like short section of the song in a way also resembles the Ki a little bit. Like that, you can even notice in the song sort of there's some elements introduced in this little section which later on appear again in the Ki.
Oh, okay.
Even though it's just this like short introductory section. Maybe to say something more about the introducing idea or introduction idea that we were just talking about. There's probably also certain elements or certain things in mapping which need a bit more introduction than others. For example, the stacking thing. I guess it's nice to introduce it early on. It makes it a bit easier for the player later on. On an extra or insane, I personally, that's just my personal opinion, wouldn't say it's super like you could just later on do it without introducing it, and
Yeah,
it wouldn't be super hard. It would
yeah.
probably still be better if you introduce it. Something which is a bit different would be something like the thing that Brody pointed out earlier. What was the one? The big slider jump meme. Yeah, this one. This one, if you had no 1-4 spacing like this in your entire map so far, and you just randomly put it into the middle of the map, that wouldn't just be really hard. It would kind of be unfair because it's like it's a totally different type of movement. But if we go back earlier into the map, where is a good example?
Right before the first Kai,
Yeah,
there's an
Ki.
example.
Yeah, or like very early on in the map, these kinds of 1-4 jumps into slow sliders, or in general just 1-4 jumps, are very early on introduced. This is like, what is it, like 5 seconds into
I
the map
almost
or something. There's the first 1-4 jump. Maybe also say that like this pattern, although it's not a 1-4 jump, it sort of introduces the idea of that the map uses a lot of uncomfortable movement early on. Like the kind of difficult thing about this or uncomfortable thing about this is that because you go with a lot of momentum into free, and then you just completely have to stop. That kind of like sudden change in momentum is kind of it is awkward, but it also gives, you could say, emphasis to a slow slider afterwards. These little kind of things, the uncomfortable movement in general, and the introduction of 1/4 of space 1/4.
So
Because all of
whilst
that is done so often, that later pattern, which is really
Mm.
hard, which Brody said is like, fuck that one, that is so difficult. Because of all those elements before, it isn't unfair. It's still challenging, but it's better introduced. It's easier to play, maybe. What do
yeah,
you want to say, John?
I just wanted to point out a bad example of concept introduction in this map, which would be in the exact same section. These back and forth triples are very nice in terms of contrasting the section and giving a unique gameplay element, but this style of 1/4 back and forth was not introduced earlier on in the map. So I would
Yeah, we can
personally
find it.
consider this section really unfair.
We cannot find it anywhere. It's just that sections. I think it's to make the section stand out because it's different from the rest of the song.
Yeah, that is
At,
obvious.
at
I
least
mean,
as far as I can say.
yeah, there's like a difficult line between making a specific section unique and making it so unique to the point where the element is unpredictable. That is like
It
a
does.
can
Yeah,
be
it doesn't.
difficult.
It doesn't suit the concept at all.
Yeah, it's also these kind of things. That's easy to like disagree about between mappers. For example, I think the back and forth is okay because uh, because 1/4 space 1/4 was introduced earlier. So I would say this is like a similar. I would personally say it's a similar type of like difficulty. While Jordan might say, well, not quite. It's like it is kind of different in a relevant way. So you can see how there like can be disagreements between what kind of things need to be introduced and which don't. Another like popular example, I guess, would be like Hansa streams. A lot of uh, there's like this
Oh, yeah.
one Charles 445 video where he talks about how it's super stupid and cringe that a lot of mappers just randomly put Hansa
Oh, so
streams
for
into the
anyone who
middle of them.
doesn't know what a Hansa stream is, it's basically groupings of two, like this, in a 1/4 stream.
Yeah, good.
Stream cut like this.
Yep.
I usually find it the Sky Stars map actually.
Yeah. There's also obviously ones in Hansa maps.
So in terms of concept introduction for an insane and expert difficulty, things that you would consider to be generic, like jumps, bursts, things like that you would see in pretty much every map don't need to be introduced. But more difficult gameplay elements like back and forths like this or Hansa streams or pretty much anything which is out of the norm is something which, in my opinion, needs to generally be introduced.
Yeah. You could the point I just wanted to specifically make with the Hansa streams is that some people seem to think that it's if you are mapping a specific kind of song, then it's fine to just put them in. While other mappers like say me and Jordan think, well, not really. You should at least have like
Just
some kind of
introduced it.
you should at least introduce something kind of similar. For example, if your map just in general uses a lot of space 1/4 jumps, like not out of sliders, but like from a clickable object like a circle into a different object. If you have that, then a lot of other kind of patterns will be generally okay. Yeah. I personally think the most important thing about whether something needs to be introduced is about like, I guess, two things would be really important. One would be if it's just super straining or whatever, like really high 1/4 spacing or space 1/4 in general, space 1/4 out of longer sliders, maybe something like high spacing into stacks. That might also be something that should be introduced earlier, not just used 5 minutes into a map. And then there are other elements which are more like reading based or something like you shouldn't. If you have 5 minutes into a map and you have a stream that like completely goes back in on itself, like it's completely overlapping, and there was nothing else like that in the map, that's probably unfair. But if you have a map where that constantly appears again and again and again, just like right at the start, then that could be totally fine. I know there's like an old example of a map that was once also disqualified because right at the end of the map there was a was it a stream corner or like a 1/4 jump into a blue tick or something? I think it was something like that. It was the what was the map? The
Oh, I
Kiku
can't.
Hana map by Karen. Fuck, I'll find it quickly.
I can't
Might be.
remember.
Oh, it was the first ranked Nobura Susume map.
Oh yeah, I know that.
I
I
don't
think
know
I
if you
found. I
have
think I
that
found
one,
it.
Jordan.
I should have it.
No, that's one of my favorite map actually.
Oh, this
I
one.
love it.
Ah,
Yeah, it was like in this stream or something right at the end.
Yeah, at the end, I see it. I see it. Yeah, it's really punishing.
Yeah, I think I
was
remember
there
what
like
the
a? I can't remember the
Yeah,
specific
a lot of.
example, but I'm guessing it was something like that, where there was a jump to a blue tick or
yeah, I
something.
think it was I'm like, let me make a picture and then send it. I think it was at some point like
I think
this.
it's where the. I think it's where Whitecat choked.
It's more like-
Ah,
I think it
His
was like
freaks
that.
so
Now,
bad.
even if it wasn't like that,
so like this.
just in general, let's say you have a pattern like that, it because it is nothing like that has appeared so far in the map. I think there's a lot of like spaced 1/4 and a lot of difficult streams and stuff. But the reasoning that some QAT or you could say the QAT was the earlier name of the NAT. What their reasoning was something like that. Because it's into a blue tick and nothing like that has appeared throughout the map, it is unexpected and thus unfair. So those would be
Isn't
like
it?
kinds of examples.
Isn't it just like a unjustified difficulty spikes?
No, it wasn't because of difficulty spike, I think. Because I mean, if the issue was with it being a difficulty spike, then the mapper would have to like have reduced the spacing in general or something like that. There's a bit of a difference between something being like unpredictable and unfair or too high intensity. You can have like something that is super low intensity but is unpredictable, I guess. Yeah, I think that should be enough talking about the Pishy Fat map. I guess maybe some other very obvious things to be pointed out would be like most of the stream or circle patterns, most of the streams or 1/4 patterns overlap in general, with the exception of those that lead into like into very strong sounds or the slow sliders, could say. There's consistent visual spacing between objects. That might also seem very obvious, but yeah.
I'm
Most
not
of the
sure. I'm not sure if you mentioned this while I were gone, but also with the linear sliders generally being on the same axis.
I did, yeah. Maybe not same axis, but I said they are tilted the same amount.
Same thing. But yeah, pretty much
There's
always
2
been
axes.
tilted the same amount. So you wouldn't find a slider
Yeah.
that's like at a strange 45-degree angle. Like they are pretty much always facing a cardinal direction. Slightly
Yeah.
offset.
Yes, like 5 degrees or 7 or whatever the fuck. Maybe another very obvious thing would be most of the 1/2 rhythms are spaced out. also very, very obvious. That's like basically a concept you would see in almost every map ever. With maybe the exception of like alternator maps. Like some alternator maps won't have space 1-2, they might have stacked instead. But yeah, special case. Did write some things down about specific sections of the song. Let me quickly see. Yeah, the longest sliders were always short. The 1/4 sliders fast. We mentioned that. There's those streams which decrease in spacing. I mentioned that spacing into snare drums is always high in my list. I think that is the case throughout the first section of the song at the least. I don't remember or know if it's a case with the later ones. And in the first section, most rhythms are 1/4 or 1/2. Then in the second section, there's overall almost only 1/2 and 1/1 rhythms. And the SV is not changing anymore. It is consistently 0.5. Yeah, I think so as well. I might have missed something on my list or whatever, but I think we talked about it enough. We could at this point maybe look at the map of a mentee, if anyone would want to send one or something. And specifically, we are not going to look at your map critically or anything. We're just going to analyze it in terms of what
I think I can send one, but it's not done yet.
Yeah, sure. You can put it. We can just look at it.
Wait, give me a minute. I'm on. It doesn't sound it. Is that okay?
What?
It's not yet sounded yet because it's still halfway.
That's fine.
Less than halfway, in fact.
Yeah, that's
Wait,
fine.
wait a moment. I can't say it's a tactic. It's an alternative map, but it's too intense. It's too intense for it. Wait, where the hell is it? Like. There.
Okay. So we will look at Kongu's one first, then the other ones maybe later. This is not modding. We're not going to say anything.
There, I think I can give you morning. Maybe tomorrow.
Yes. Okay. Does everyone have the map open?
Starting off with the Candyland slider.
Candyland slider.
Yeah, it's just an idea. Just an idea.
The approach rate to 0. Okay, so at this point anyone can just point out anything they think is a consistently repeated idea at this point.
Should I tell? Should I answer too?
I guess not. I don't know. Can maybe say something, but the others.
Yeah, maybe I can give a clue. Maybe I can put a timeline on it. I think.
There's something which I immediately noticed in this section.
The most obvious one is actually
Playfield, I guess.
Playfield what?
Yeah, the first play. The most obvious one is here.
It's a lot of time in the middle.
The most obvious one is from the
Enough time in the middle. I don't know about that. Or like, well, it wouldn't. It's not so. It's not so much in the middle that you could say it's like intentional or like a repeating idea or something. So I wouldn't say that's a concept in the map. That is just like I don't know what do you say, a general observation. Anything else?
How did you look through the map that quickly? I've only just got through it.
I haven't looked quickly through it. I haven't looked through it completely. I'm still looking.
Uh, yeah, the curve sliders at 17 seconds. This is pretty much the basis of the map. This kind of movement
7
through
seconds?
the 17 seconds.
Oh,
These kinds of movements through the 1-beat sliders.
true, they are rather curved. Yeah.
And it's the movement into the slider from the previous as well.
Yeah, it's always movement is always most of the time it's directly implied into the next object.
Most of the time. I think
at the
that's kind
time,
of,
yeah.
it's the inconsistency I think is kind of what brings it down. You do want to add variation to your map, but there are occasions where this isn't really followed, like this example, where it's more of a circular motion, which kind of just destroys the concept you've tried to build. But most of
Yeah.
the times it's executed quite well.
Well,
And
the question might also be whether they even intended to be a concept.
I'm fairly sure because it repeats through the Kai as well.
Yeah, I think I think they were Congo was trying to do it. I'm just what I wanted to say was sort of like just because we are like pointing this out doesn't mean that in all of your maps you have to like consistently either
Yeah,
make out
it's only for
whether
this map. I
implied or
know.
not implied.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are probably a lot of maps where there's a lot of inconsistency between whether spacing whether sliders lead into the next object or don't. But an important thing I guess would be that if they all consistently lead into the next object, then you could say that is a concept. If it's sort of like randomly changing, then
That is not.
Yeah,
then
that's
it's not
not
a
a good
concept
idea.
anymore.
If
It's
it's
Then it's
not,
just like
if the idea of the slider movement isn't generally the focus of the mapper, it's not focused on in the map, then variation would be okay. In this map in particular, you can tell it's something that the mapper tried to focus on.
yes. Does anybody else notice something besides Jordan Congo?
this is my point. It's actually
Actually, my concept was that this map has no concepts. Nah, just kidding.
it's just not a
That would be a good meme though.
Maybe someone could notice something in regard to the half-beat jumps, possibly.
Maybe. Or maybe another obvious thing would be in most of the intense sections of the song, what was it?
I think I
Rhythm
did
is
the
almost
slower
constant.
section. Slower section is better.
So
I think I did the slower section better about the concept thing.
I don't know. If you think so,
I,
I'm not
I,
sure.
I think they're both quite similar.
I haven't looked at it enough to say.
I mostly use 38 degrees things for the slower section. And I somehow copied this stupid section into the last KI, and I don't know why I did that. It just
Well, did I finish what I said earlier? I think I did, but something like in the intense section of the songs, most of the rhythms are constant 1-2 filler with like longer sliders in between. But like the actual gaps
mostly
between
1-2,
objects are 1-2. Yeah.
mostly 1-2s. I'm still afraid to add overmapped because I'm still not good at it.
Yeah,
I don't know how to apply it. So yeah, I just mostly 1-2.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just don't need to anyway. It like depends on how repetitive your song is or something, or like how.
Yeah, it's
It
kind of
depends on a lot
repetitive.
of other things. Anyway, so the reason I'm just pointing this out is that even though it might seem like super obvious what I earlier said, like, oh wow, Celektus, most of the rhythms in the intense section of the song are 1-2 rhythm. There's 1-2 gaps between everything. Duh, that's like the case with 90% of all maps that are ever made. Wow. The important thing about that is that it's still a concept, no matter how obvious it is. You could say that like
Yeah,
having
so I think it's the
1-2
most
jump.
basic concepts.
Yeah, you could even say having space 1-2 is a concept if it's done consistently throughout a map. Having 1-2 jumps, or most 1-2 as jumps is a concept. So basically any idea, no matter how simple or fundamental or specific or complex, all of those are concepts. And so you can maybe start to see that like concepts are like
Yeah,
kind of the building blocks that you make your map out of, or that you yeah.
I think under proper execution for that. If you mean that.
Yeah, Jakob, you pointed out something interesting, which we might talk about later, which is whether just being consistent or just having some kind of structure is enough for a map to be good. But yeah, for now, I guess. Does anybody else have anything to say about this map? Is there any other anything else that's consistent, like slider shapes, SV, visual spacing? Does there anything specific happen when there's a certain sound happening in the song?
If no one will say anything, then I'll mention the 1-2 jumps. The 1-2 jumps generally seem to be higher intensity and a more awkward patterning compared to regular flow aim. Like, for example, these. And also these as well, which really makes them stand out in the map as a whole compared to the general alt, kind of stacking and flow aim patterns, which is quite nice.
They're a lot more spaced, right?
But they are, I do think they are maybe a bit overkill. But they are.
I think I'm going overboard with it.
They're a good contrast. They're a good contrast in terms of movement, and also the different combo, the different new combo structure as well gives them, a different visual. So I think those are also nice.
We're not talking about fixing anything, by the way. This isn't. We are not modding the map. It's about.
Yeah, I think he's I think he just want to mod something, just like I do.
Well, it's also not about whether you like it or not. I would personally say, I mean, I don't really think the map is super good, but that simply doesn't matter. We're just talking. We're just
Yeah,
analyzing.
it's just personal opinion. It's just a personal opinion. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, or like, well, more broadly speaking, the point is, even if a bad map is like super stupid or bad or whatever, you can still like
They still have
try
concept.
to it still probably has concepts, or you can analyze it as if it has concepts. Or maybe you can even analyze it in what ways it lacks concepts or something. So we're just not talking about whether this is a good thing, whether we could fix anything. Just about what things are repeating, what ideas are in this map.
I think he's hungry.
Maybe I was said too much. Whatever. I think something that also consistently repeats a little bit, but sometimes like changes is like the visual spacing between objects. You can see with a few patterns like this one. Gonku, I think, tried to keep the visual spacing between a lot of objects consistent.
Wait, let me see. Oh,
Yeah, or like
the three sliders before after the slider shapes. Yeah, I see it.
or like
Uh.
yeah, basically the visual space between the sliders is kind of always the same. It's always this amount or something like that.
Yeah, I see.
Now I think you could say that's a concept, but then also there's things where it doesn't appear again or whatever. So consistent visual spacing would be another concept. I guess in this map, it's maybe not.
I always keep visual spacing in mind, but I didn't know how I messed up. I messed up on that.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a difficult thing to keep it constantly consistent.
Yeah.
It's also very restrictive, you could say.
Yeah.
Doggo.
I wish I have a pet. They don't know. My parents didn't allow pets.
Let me check something quickly.
It's not a cat. It's an octopus.
Never tried out. I just said what am I saying?
Shall we look at another? Shall we analyze the structure of one more map and then move to the
Yes.
next section? So let's
Yako
look
said
at.
Yako said about Prody's map. Yako said about Prody map. Maybe
Yeah.
we can. Let's have.
Yeah, let's look
Yes.
at Prody's map.
Oh, also I want to say I have push to talk on now, and I've never done that before.
Yeah, it's kind of whack. It's kind of whack to use that.
Fuck the push the talk. I hate.
Okay, let's look at Prody's.
Still love it, but it sounds jarring.
Everyone open
It sounds whack for me.
Let's actually look at the insane, because with the
I
top
don't
being
like it the light.
the thing with structure, with collab maps, it's a really weird thing to balance.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to say actually, because
because
we have our own idea.
Yeah, so trying to have a structure that works well in a collab map is really hard because both mappers want to give their own sense of style, but there does need to be some kind of coherency to it as well. So I think for this one, we're probably, for the meantime anyway, just looking at the insane difficulty. So I'll relink it. On the insane difficulty, try and think of some kind of ideas or structure that repeats through the map. And let's say you've got about 3 minutes, and then we can go through them. And actually, I'll play it as well on the stream whilst we're waiting.
Slow and I'll finance. It's killing me. God damn it.
Map.
I think the constant use of health beat sliders at the first section.
Yeah. Well, that is a concept that's used in the intro. It's even in the slower parts though. It's not something that is really repeated. There is something that repeats a lot in this map, which for an insane difficulty, I personally would consider this a concept which is probably more difficult for the typical insane. And it is the rhythm. There's a certain rhythm element that repeats a lot, which on its own might be difficult, but in this map does make it quite a more interesting gameplay experience than the typical insane difficulty. Can anyone think what that might be? I'm not even proddy. Someone must notice it. Yeah, stop modding, please.
It doesn't stop. Oh my god.
If you want to
Wow.
mod that bad, just go onto the discussion page and don't do it in the chat. Right, so one thing that repeats a lot in this map is the use of doubles, ending on blue ticks. Doubles generally, do require some amount of finger control. It's not something you would typically see in an insane, because an insane would usually focus on more basic rhythm. But this consistently uses doubles to map the synth, the high pitch synth, and it's pretty much used throughout the whole map, which is nice. It's very consistent in its use. And a lot of the times, the doubles are followed by a short kick slider. The only exception to that is when the doubles are mapped on drums. I'm not sure if this was intentional or not. If I can find it. The only exception is pretty much when the doubles aren't mapped on the synth, but mapped on drums. I guess that's kind of mapped on synth, but it's a double snare.
Intentional because of the song intensity. Didn't match that.
What did you say, sorry?
I think it's intentional because of the
Yeah.
song's intensity.
I guess this is one good thing because not having the kick
Because,
slider here is making the rhythm less dense, which kind of gives a nice in this transitional part where the intensity drops. It's kind of good in this part specifically to reduce the rhythm intensity. So not using the kick slider here was a really good decision.
I have a question specifically for Yako. Do you notice anything about the slider shapes in this map?
yeah, like I see.
Are you there, Yako? Oh, okay.
Yako's just sat there in a map set verifier.
we aren't ranking it. We aren't ranking it yet.
Sharp, true. There's a lot of with a few ones with red anchors.
I like what it's scolding.
Yeah, Whoopi or like there's also these
Will be.
these might be good examples also. Like they are what would you call it, Jord? Like squiggly or but I don't know. That was nice.
Wait.
That's the correct term for him.
Correct.
Yeah, most alt map is that. So yeah.
Yeah,
Can't blame me.
there's a
So bad.
really good use of them at the end where it's as the sliders progress, as the sliders repeat, the shapes kind of progress into more and more chaotic, which is kind of nice.
Yes.
Yeah, I just noticed that it's only mostly appears on the last, at the first and the intro, the outro.
You mean the repeat slider, the bus?
This one, the wavy slider one.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, they like the squiggly sliders are pretty much only in the intro and the outro.
But they appear somewhat consistently. You could say they are a little mini concept. Does anybody notice anything about symmetry?
I see. This one. I am not at my computer.
Yako,
again.
do you notice anything about symmetry?
Is it this one?
Well, Congo, I don't know what. Well, I guess that's symmetric, but it's
It is not really symmetric. Whenever you see a linear pattern like this, if someone's doing symmetry,
Yeah, it's
usually
linear.
it's
I knew.
this line running through the pattern.
Yeah, it's linear. I forgot that.
You'd usually expect that to be a axis for some kind of off-axis symmetry. So an example of that would be something like this, where a linear pattern is used as the axis of symmetry, like that. So that could be an example of it, but that's not really utilized in this map.
Yeah,
I think there's one pattern which is kind of like that. Well, I'm asking you specifically the questions because because I want you to analyze the map, and I think with questions you can do it better. Now,
Uh,
there's a lot more a lot more symmetric patterns in this map actually. Besides like the few that we pointed out, you could in general say that a kind of like very global concept, global mini concept that Prodi seems to use is, in general, there are a lot of patterns with very simple symmetry. I don't know. Simple is maybe the wrong word, but I guess some very obvious like symmetry where some pattern appears on the playfield, and then it's like completely flipped on the other position of the playfield. Like these, for example, also. Let's say that it's always like the top half of sliders is then basically perfectly control G below. Same with the next few sliders, but the next few sliders are then more fucked up.
yeah, I still like this one though. I still like this one though.
Yeah, and there's also patterns like these, of course, which are symmetric in this way. Basically, there are a lot of examples of like very noticeable symmetry, and a lot of more border maps or whatever, or other maps. Symmetry might be less obvious or not the main focus, but here there are a lot of patterns which are symmetric in this way.
Yeah.
Ooh.
There's an example at 1 minute 5 as well. Whereas the pattern, it's not in the same place on the playfield like the other ones where it repeated, but rather it's like a rotational symmetry.
I
And with
once
the
heard
two
like a term in a book that it's like called a miracle symmetry or something.
Have you looked at the top def of this map?
No,
No.
I'm looking
Let
at
me
it
see.
insane.
I've kind of avoided it because talking about structure on a collab map is a sticky subject.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to interpret.
I guess we can have a quick look
They,
at it. There is one more thing in this map though in terms of concepts, and it's in relation to perfect stacks in the second Kai. Whereas perfect stacks on half beat notes are introduced. They're used fairly consistently in this section, where a half beat stack is used immediately before some large 1-2 jumps, which isolated in its own is quite good in this section. It's a good consistent use, and I think it's provides some fun gameplay. In the whole map, in the map as a whole, though, it maybe doesn't fit too well because perfect stacks do give some kind of reading element. I would consider this to be unpredictable, and perfect stacks should probably have been used earlier on in the map to kind of help introduce them.
Especially the hidden players are gonna be sad.
No one cares about hidden players. Hidden players suck. Who plays hidden?
Shiny Beacon plays in.
So yeah,
easy game by itself.
this is not intensity related or strain, more of a reason as to a reading pattern which should have been introduced. Something that might be easy to play but unpredictable.
Yeah, I could look. I look at the collective a little for a bit, but it uses a lot of stacks. Not the and not the, and it's like a perfectly overlapping sliders.
What did you
Right,
notice?
yeah.
I'll look at the collab diff now. What did you specifically notice?
Overlay versus
Oh, so like
perfectly overlapping sliders.
So like perfect
Perfectly
slider
overlapping
body
sliders.
overlaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's overlap is new combo, I guess. Not out actually. It's just no, never mind.
in the same diff, I think all of the doubles are also stacked, right? I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, they're all stacked. Pretty much all of the doubles end with a quarter beat kick slider, barring one, which is kind of in the breakdown of the last Kai. Ending a double with a slider itself, kind of it maintains polarity. I don't know if we want to go into that subject. But it means because if you have a double, usually a quarter beat double will start on the beat and end on a blue tick. It will at least start or end on a blue tick, which can make rhythm difficult. But if you start a double or end a double with a kick slider, it means the whole pattern is basically half a beat, and it makes it easier to maintain rhythm. I think I covered polarity in a previous lecture,
Yes.
so maybe my mentees understand it.
I also talked about polarity in the last one.
Good.
Well, I guess
So-
your mentees weren't there, but
So yeah, in the insane, using the kick sliders helps maintain polarity, which is pretty necessary on an insane difficulty. It's a means of rhythm simplification.
yeah, although with Kickstarter it's a bit weird, right?
I personally don't think so. But I can understand though, having releasing a slider on a red tick might be jarring, but if you use it enough, it's something a player can get used to.
Just be consistent with it, or else you'll make team up a little weird.
So in the collab difficulty, as mentioned, there's like these perfect slider body overlaps, and slider body overlaps here as well. Now this is kind of the opposite of not introducing a concept. This is kind of like teasing a concept of slider body overlaps to be developed, but by the looks of it, does not get developed at all. Actually, I think I just lied. I've just noticed one. There's like some half-beat ones. It's used in one section, which I guess is nice that it was introduced earlier.
I think it's just that's like I didn't map very much of this, so I kind of used it where I did. But my mapping probably wasn't very well suited for a collab with Brody because our mapping styles are
Oh
really
shit,
different.
was this a collab with Proddy with you? I didn't even
Yeah.
realise.
Really?
Okay. This is the introduction and the intro of slider body overlaps is nice. It probably would have been good to kind of sprinkle the concept out elsewhere in other sections, just
But
because it
just to be just to be clear, I mapped like the beginning and the kind of middle bit, and that was kind of it.
Oh, so you mapped all the parts with the overlaps.
Yeah.
Right. So it probably would have
And
been
the
good
stream.
probably would have been good for Proddy to add some slider border overlaps, because it is one thing introducing a concept at the start of the map, for it then to be used later on. I think this is an example where it feels like it was introduced, then forgotten about,
And then introduce again.
and then it suddenly appears. So just because of the length of time between these two, probably wouldn't consider this to be a proper introduction. Would have been good to kind of not maybe abuse it in the other sections, but kind of sprinkle it in certain
What do you think of
parts.
the because I think just after the first stream there's some like 1/4 jumps, or in my section I remember having some kind of spaced 1/4.
Oh, is it after this long stream, like
I think
130
so.
in?
Yeah, just
Oh, these stream jumps.
yeah.
I didn't remember seeing any stream jumps earlier on.
I don't see it either.
So yeah,
Select the first.
there's not really any stream jumps, and on top of that, there's not really any bursts either. Now this is an extra difficulty. You wouldn't really be expected to introduce bursts because it's quite a common gameplay element. But coming from this longest stream in the map, being the first stream in the map, and then immediately following that with some jump streams, it's probably not suitable.
Okay.
I would start by simplifying this stream. just because it's a 16-note stream and there's literally like no other bursts earlier on in the map, from what I saw. And then also remove these jump streams.
Okay. I remember there also being one in like the bottom left corner.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
Oh,
it's just
yes,
me,
here
but
as
I
well.
can't find this. Yeah, I'm about to point that. I'm a little late, I guess.
Yeah,
Should we
so
look at
this
the
is
next
kind of
map?
the same. If you are to isolate your sections of mapping, I would probably say that this is okay to use streams like this, just isolating your sections. As I said though, collabs are kind of tricky because to properly introduce stuff like this, both people kind of have to work together.
Yeah.
And this was not introduced in the earlier sections.
True. Fuck Og. Fuck LG.
Why you blame others? Oh,
Are we
Right,
done with this map?
I think we can move on to the next part of the
Next-
lecture.
Next part, or should we look at Yako's one quickly? Because it's very short and has some obvious
Okay,
concepts.
if it's short, we can have a look.
How long is this one? It's like 1 minute. But actually, it's less. It's minus 13 seconds.
Please don't tell me it's an EN spread.
Kinda is, but it's
Oh,
his
EN
difference.
ENH. Okay.
Yeah.
what happened in the chat? Oh my god.
By the way, little room. Well, I'll say this later. That's just whatever.
Yeah,
Everyone.
goodbye.
Here's the map again. Everyone, download it, open it, look at the objects on the screen.
Then Yako, you need to write a 500-word analysis on the concept.
Dude, I
used.
make advance. I'm not making the top div. But sure.
Okay, low diff enjoyer, I guess.
No, which difficult? Oh, okay. Never mind. It's the one that says Silver Yako in it.
Okay,
Wow.
low diff enjoyer, I think is with me.
Yeah, and Yako, you don't have to say anything. Well, not yet. Let the others talk about your map. At least nobody's going to mod it now.
Yeah, but self-modding is actually pretty rare.
What is rare?
Self-modding.
Self-modding. True, I guess.
Well, I guess in some sense or another, everyone self-mods as the map.
Yeah.
So
It might
Yeah,
might
you
make
got the
sense
idea.
to self-mod something that's like really old. I can't self-mod, or like I can't judge my most recent maps very well personally. I always
Yeah,
like
but
they're kind of
it
good,
just-
so. But then really old
Yeah,
maps,
I
I
think
feel
it's
like, okay, yeah, I see the issues. Okay, does everyone have it open? What are the concepts, my boys? You should
Wait, I
notice
haven't even opened it. Okay.
Epic. Prodi, do you have anything to say? Do you have it open? Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to interpret this.
now, just one thing to mention, because this is an advanced difficulty, something that you might find totally normal in an insane or an extra would be something probably worth mentioning in this map. Just because in an advanced difficulty you tend to find less concepts, more simpler ideas and not really much going on. That isn't the case for this map. There's more going on than what you'd find in your typical advanced difficulty.
True.
So it's just worth mentioning that, even though it might not seem worth mentioning. If you do notice anything that repeats, that isn't typical for a low difficulty. Yeah.
Because
then
of the
mention it.
restriction.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
Because
of the
low
restrictions
difficulties are
stuff.
more restricted.
Yeah, usually some of the only concepts you can really do are like with visual stuff like slider shapes, or I guess on hard
Yeah,
difficulties you can kind of do some stacking stuff, but really difficult stacking stuff also is like discouraged on hard difficulties. That's It's kind of rough.
Proddy's coming in hot with these insults.
Yep, the chat is going pretty hard. The chat is going pretty hard right here.
Even though Proddy is like completely off base, and that's like one of the things I thought of when I saw this was the slider shapes and the organization of them. So
The slider shapes are very consistently used, so they are definitely. You could say they are a concept because it's all. I think it's always the same shape. No, actually not. There are some like with red anchors, but I think all curve. No, not all. Fuck! I just thought all the curves are curved the same amount, but they are not.
they
It's
might
like-
not be pixel perfect, but they are intentionally supposed to have the same curvature, as far as I
Yeah,
can
or
tell.
like most of them are the same curvature. I think there are a few little exceptions. But yeah.
I believe the exceptions are unintentional. Maybe
could
apart from this pattern, which I'm showing now. Pretty much all of the
Yeah.
sliders have
I
the
think
same
it's I think
curvature.
it's anything. I think it's anything. Yeah, it's an assumption like this.
And obviously we have the same thing with the straight sliders. It was mentioned by one of us in the Pishy head map that they are just tilted the same amount or that they are on the same axis. Same kind of thing. I think Proddy's map actually had that as well. I just don't. Nobody pointed it out or whatever. Because it might have been super obvious. Does anybody notice anything about? Yeah. Just does anybody notice anything else? And again, it's not about the
Jump.
quality of anything. Jump?
Yeah, I don't mind the quality, but the jumps of new combo, I guess. To
Yeah.
it's kind of
So
yeah. This one.
There's a couple of examples. So which do you mean?
I think he means
This one, I guess. Like this one.
or like those are these
114.
sections. There's always a bigger jump into the.
Yeah, we could jump to the next
Yeah,
combo.
the sliders. Yeah. So there's kind of like a stop and go motion. Yeah,
that's
that
that's
repeats
more,
later
yeah.
on.
Yeah, in general, that's stop and go motion. Probably is basically everywhere here, right?
Yeah, so it follows
Yeah, it's
on.
everywhere.
It follows onto this section, where the sounds in the song are the same, but there's a different rhythm used, for contrast.
Yeah, I think
Whereas
it's like
there's
A B.
a large jump.
No, it's like an A B patterns or something like that.
If anything, it's ABAC. Because the
Has that
second
equally-
and fourth sections are different. But ABAC structure is quite good because it means you can use 3 different types of variation whilst always returning to the same core concept that you use in the A section. So that's probably a good choice for this kind of repetitive song.
Also something which could maybe be said about.
Yo, finally past midnight.
Actually, let me ask it as a question. I think this pattern is well, on its own it would be kind of difficult, but it's introduced in some way. Can somebody like explain in what way this kind of pattern is being introduced, or like what makes it easier that appeared earlier? What makes it more predictable? In this case, Jaco could also explain himself if he wanted to.
If I only remember.
Well, it's not. I'm not necessarily asking you because I don't know if you are aware that you introduced this. basically the question is just like, this pattern specifically is more difficult than the rest of the patterns, I feel like. But in what way is it not? Is it introduced? Or what? Or like, yeah.
Yeah, it's the only pattern that shapes like that.
True, but like, what does it have? Or like, what does it have in common? What do other patterns have in common with it?
Wait.
Maybe think about the rhythm and spacing.
Yeah, or like in general, I'm asking for something that is really, really obvious. Obvious, or like it's something so basic you might not think that it's worth pointing out or something. What is the same concept, Jaco? By the way, after this map, we are doing something else.
Yeah.
Oh, the tree.
Okay, so I'll say the obvious thing. So the obvious similar thing between this pattern and every other pattern that I was thinking of is there are stacks in it, right?
Yeah, they are stacked there.
No, no, yeah, of course, that's like super obvious. Yeah, there are stacks in it.
I think
Now,
the pattern that really stands out for me, aside from that, the previous one is this. I'm not sure it's true or not, but it's kind of looks similar.
you could say that it also stands out in a certain way, and it also involves a kind of different
Yeah.
kind of stacking. Now, so I said that both of those patterns have stacking in them. Now, if we imagine that this was just a super normal hard difficulty with all space 1, 2 or something, why would it be like why would it be bad to just put this pattern that that I pointed out earlier just into it randomly? Could anyone have an idea why it would be bad, or why would it be? Yeah, why would it need more introduction in a normal map?
I think it's because of the frequency, because it's the only part that.
I mean, frequency of stacks. Like, there's a lot of stacks.
No, the
Or
frequency of stacks from which sliders, because it's the only thing that's stacked, while the rest is surplus to sliders.
what can you say? Can you say it again? I'm not sure I understand.
The only thing that's stacked from the swap pattern I saw is stacks between sliders, which didn't really exist in most of the map. Most of the stacks are just circles to circles.
That's
And
not.
circles to sliders.
Okay, let me try to let me know if what I'm saying is what you mean. So early on in the map, all of the stacks were between sliders. In this pattern, the stacks are between all between circles. There's like a switching between stack and then space circle and then stack, etc. Is that what you mean?
Wait, let me try to say it again. What I said, what I see from this map is the stacks that mostly used at this map is circle to sliders and circle to circles. While the only thing that isn't is the pattern I shown.
Oh, you mean then
Oh
this
yes,
one?
that's. I mean, I
Yeah,
guess
that one.
that's
That
true.
one.
Yeah, the slider and
That's
stack.
the only thing that's different.
Yeah, you could
And
say
also
that one is
the
like
okay.
standing really out a lot. I would agree, but
That's true. That is that is standing out a lot. That's
yeah,
not really related to the question that was asked though. But you are
true.
right. You are
Yeah,
right in saying that.
yeah. You could
It,
almost say it might be inconsistent, but it's like the type of inconsistency where it's hard to say whether it like matters or something. Anyway, so the question earlier was the pattern that I pointed out. This one. Why? If I just put this in a normal difficulty where all of the objects are spaced out and there's almost no stacks in it, what would be wrong with that? Or why? How would I introduce this? How does Jaco introduce this, or make it easier for the player to predict? Any ideas?
We can find it.
Jaco, the pattern I just linked. Why do you think would it be bad to just put this in a random map where all of the objects are spaced out? Any idea? Well, okay, true. You say I stack a lot of stuff, so
yeah, I agree with that. That's what I was going to say. Whereas the one beat stacks, it's a good thing that the one beat stacks were introduced earlier on because there's a lot of half beat stacks as well. But you can tell the one beat stacks are used with new combos to differentiate them.
yeah. Or like the basic point in general is that if you put this in a map where there's no other patterns with stacks in it, then it's going to be something like that is very unpredictable for a normal or advanced or hard diff players because stacks are like a very difficult reading element for them. But if you have a map where stacks are happening all the time and they are like maybe first happening in a very easy way, like in Jako's map, for example, in the beginning, all of the stacks are just between sliders, like this one, and then the next few or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
All of those are between sliders. So in a way, doing it between sliders makes it kind of it's a bit easier if it was as if it was just circles. Now these are all 1-2 stacks, so that's very predictable so far. Then the next pattern Yaku does, stacks are now a different rhythm, but they are like still stacked. So well, early on, he introduced the idea that this rhythm is sometimes stacked, sometimes it's spaced. Now he introduces the idea, oh, sometimes there's also different rhythm, which is also stacked. Now with that idea in mind, basically when we get to this pattern, the really complicated thing about this for a normal or advanced diff player would be that there's a lot of changes in spacing and rhythm.
That's just stacked. Yeah,
Like
I
there's
understand.
1-1 stack, then there's spaced 1-2, then there's uh, stacked 1-1 again, then there's spaced 1-2 again, etc. So there's like a lot of switching in between stacked and spaced, etc.
Yeah.
And that would be really difficult in a normal advance, but because Jaco already used easier types of stacking earlier on, and even different rhythms which are stacked or spaced, there's sort of there's an expectation that the player the player can expect that or something, rather than if everything was spaced. In general, this kind of concept is also would also be really hard if you just put it into a random map. It makes then also sense that this is like an advanced or maybe even almost a hard difficulty, because this is like a very reading wise, this is stack size super difficult for normal players, as opposed to just spacing everything out, or making all the 1-2 stacked and the 1-1 spaced out. Yeah, okay. I think we can technically speaking move on. There aren't many more concepts in this map, besides maybe that like the spacing of 1-2 is always the same. It's always like DS, or it's almost DS. It's not quite DS. It's like there's like consistent visual spacing between stuff, blah blah blah. So that's it. We can move on to the next section or whatever. What's the name of the song again? Not a meme song. Oh. Hard